Hi there, greetings once again. This is Clifford Bates, and welcome to Reading Sun Tzu Art of War. Today we're looking at the eighth chapter, which is we're out of 8 out of 13, so we're over the hump of the middle. We're now dealing with the so-called nine changes. Now, we're using the Milford translation, which is there's you can find this version or this the Penguin. They're available. They're not that expensive. Why Mumford? As I will say other words, I repeat it. Mumford maintains the aphorismic form of the aphorismatic form, the aphorisms. The Chinese language, the original Chinese language, really doesn't have a grammar like we do, in that sense that it's kind of a word order language in that aspect. And that's not I'm being inaccurate here, but I want to give you a sense that there's not a very it's basically sense of words that are connected. Words have the pictograms, the image of the pictogram. The pictogrammic traditional thing of this would then be the relationship to each other. Is the way it works, and therefore the format of the original Chinese of this was, a very specific kind of aphorismic way, not really kind of in the sense, we would, and a lot of translations in the 19th century and 20th century often tried to change it, turn it away from aphorisms to kind of like, like an essay, like and often elaborating, spelling out, and making, not only clarifying, but also often, rather, instead of translating, they would often kind of fill in information that was implied or background information. Now we're doing that here in our talk, but in a translation we should kind of let the translation speak, and if you're going to have such things, you put them in notes. Now, what is good about this translation, the translations that I'm recommending are the simple ones. There's no big commentaries attached to this. It's only the text, and it's translated with aphorism. Now, some might say, "Well, wouldn't it be better to give the notes?" And I said, "Yes, it would be, but these are rather inexpensive and accessible for people, and the translation is a very good, reliable translation in this sense. Of course, every translation kind of is a kind of compromise. He is he will often sometimes compromise certain kind of words to fit our time in that sense, like state, the realm or the empire, or would be translated as state, and things like this that are more kind of make sense to us in that sense. But I'm going to let that stay, and you can go read that if you want. Go get other translations out there and things like this. Now, I've gone over this before, and I mention this again now, only kind of as a reminder, what I've said earlier in that sense. Let's return to this eighth chapter and focus on what he does here, the nine changes. Again, he introduces the text with his classic introduction of remember, this was a kind of an account of what Master Sun Tzu, the great general leader, said. Okay, so therefore it begins with the famous Master Sun said. Um, and he goes, in war, the general will receive orders from his sovereign, then assembles his troops and form an army. So he's repeating things again. He's repeating the thing, right? He repeats something he's done here. And again, pay attention. If we look at this here, we see that the format is like this, and where every time it's at the edge here, that's a new stanza in that sense. So that pays, and therefore there's a kind of a connection here. And we have to always remember that sometimes, again, I'm going to report this is a problem with any e-text. The e-texts, a printed version, there's more care. Now, of course, not every printed version. Some printed versions are, done through, self-publishing that they put no real effort into making sure the text works right. Some e-published versions often are copies that leave in notes and numbers and spacing issues that make it very difficult. So it depends on how some OC are copying, some of the are not edited at all. Okay, but in serious edited published works, even self-published ones that are edited properly, you will see pagation properly executed, and therefore the front structures of things are a little more evenly. In ebooks, because everything is different, every browser will be different. These things kind of flop all over the place. Okay, so therefore you see some extra spacing, and sometimes something comes in that wasn't really intended. Uh, but we'll say here the war one. We start out with war. The general receives his orders from a sovereign and his troops and assembles. This is a general point. Now it goes. Now then he says. Now he's going to give some kind of a series of one, two, three, four, five aspects of the confrontation of terrain. Um, um, Now here he kind of repeats something he addressed earlier about the types of terrain and types of things you should worry. He repeats some aspects of things. The or is that? I want to make sure I got it right. Turn off the thing covered. Um, everything gets collapsed in my memory from doing this so many times. So I always forget, sometimes things in later chapters I think are early chapters, and some things in later chapters. I thought we talked about the land at one point, about the different grounds, about death ground, and about these things. Well, again, it um, okay. I'm not going to worry about it for the purpose of our moment right now. Um, Intractable terrain. This is saying intractable terrain. Intractable means it's very difficult to cross, very difficult to move around, right? To track over. Don't encamp. So if the ground is intractable, don't set up camp. Not necessarily a good idea. Why? Oh, but you're saying, well, I mean, that's great. It's intractable, so the other side won't be able to cross it, but you can't escape. Okay, and therefore they can basically put you in a situation where you can't escape, and therefore they can this make you immobile and useless. Um, on crossover terrain, you should form joint forces with allies. Crossover is just terrain that has connections to this, right? On dire terrain means terrains that are very risky and dire. Don't linger. Move quickly around it. Right? On enclosed terrain, make strategic plans. Now, enclosed it implies that you're enclosed. This means you're protected. You have a back against you. You're kind of enclosed a certain way, and therefore you should make your strategic plans of what you're going to really do. You're kind of safe at this moment in that sense, right? If you're enclosed a certain level that you're not necessarily endangered from attack, you can make your strategic plans. And on death terrain, do battle. And okay, now this is a case right here of a goopy goopy. I mean, goopy goopy means a computer tech glitch because on the text it's clear it's a new stanza. There are roads not to take. Right. Okay. So after talking about the five terrain features. Five. Now remember, it's interesting. The nine changes, right? But the first we have these five types of terrains and what to do, what not to do, or to do. Okay. Was it intractable is a not, crossroad is something to do, dire is not, enclosed do something, death battle do something. So do not join, do not make, do not do. Okay. Now he goes, there are roads, there are armies, there are towns, there are terrains, there are rulers' orders. These are the things, right? And these are the not to, in other words, this is this next level, of four, I think. Yeah, no, four. Yeah, four. No, five, because roads. That's why it's. I'm apologize that the about because we're using this on Google. Google should fix this. There are roads not to take. So there are roads not to take. There are armies not to attack, towns not to besiege, terrains not to contest, and rulers' orders not to obey. So these are the do nots, right? These are the do nots. The five. So the five terrains, the five do nots, right? And now we get this very interesting thing. The general who knows the gains of the nine changes understand more. So therefore, the nine changes, he's saying the general who knows the profit, the benefits, the gains, what, in other words, what is it, the advantages of you in your unit, and the other things. No, of the nine changes understands war. Okay, to understand war, you need to know the profit and what to avoid on the nine changes, right? What is beneficial and what is not beneficial of the non, and choose the beneficial and avoid the non-beneficial, right? This is what the understanding of war is in this sense, the nine changes. He goes, the general ignorant of the ignorant of gains of the nine changes may know the lay of the land, but he will never reap the gain of that knowledge. In other words, he's saying, if you're if you don't know if you're ignorant of the gains that are available for the nine changes. In other words, you don't know what the nine changes are, what's the advantages of what are the benefits. You don't know this. Even if you know the land, you'll never profit from that knowledge. So you need to know. Not only do you have to know knowledge of the land, you also have to know knowledge of the nine changes. Okay, he continues this. This is the next example. The warrior ignorant of the art of the nine changes, may know the five gains, but he will not get the most from his men. So, in other words, the warrior ignorant of the art of the nine changes may know the five gains, in other words, the five benefits, right? But will not be able to get the most from his men. So he may be able to get some because he knows the gains, but he doesn't know about the art as a whole, right? The change. The wide leaser, read the next line. So we have the two things. We have the warrior, general ignorant of the gains, of the nine changes. The warrior ignorant of the art of the nine changes. So it's not only the gains, but knows the five gains. So he's saying that, what is this? He gives him a hint here. There's an art of of what he calls the nine changes. So the art of the nine changes, which has the art of the nine changes has five gains. Okay, and therefore the warrior here is ignorant of the art but knows the five gains, but he still will not get the. In other words, you need to know both the art and what the gains are, right? And now he does this point. I've talked about those two examples of the one totally ignorant of the art, and then ignorant of both the art and the not gains, but ignorant only of the art. Now we have the wise leader in his deliberation always blends considerations of gain and harm. Okay? Cost benefit, right? The wise leader always must measure cost and benefit. By tempering thoughts of gain, he can accomplish his goal. In other words, what is he saying here? You should be careful. You should always temper gain. Gain is not infinite. In other words, a benefit has always a cost. So you have to take the cost into consideration. So therefore, you need to temper the gain so that what? That you don't pay costs that you cannot pay. In other words, if the cost becomes prohibitive. Now, the cost is relative to what you have to lose. What do you have? What is there? What is it? What will you have? You shouldn't throw. A prudent actor doesn't throw everything he has into the game. Okay, that's desperate. You shouldn't be desperate. You should never be desperate in that sense. Desperation usually leads to disaster, or or relying on luck. You shouldn't rely on luck. Remember what he said. The or previous chapters. He says the skillful warrior doesn't do it he does it when things are like going to be. There's the outcome is completely secure in that sense that you know it's going to happen. There's inevitability towards the outcome. The effective leader, the effective decision maker here is going to act in a way that his outcome is going to, look at the situation in a way, understanding the choices and cost, the profits, or the things you want to gain, the advantages, and then the costs of them, and pick the one that you can achieve, and then set up the situation so it's that you are able to simply achieve it. In other words, there's no chance that of any outcome other than success. Okay, so you can do this, but you can temper thoughts of gain. He can accomplish his goals, right? By tempering thoughts of gain, by tempering thoughts of harm, he can extricate himself from calamity. In other words, again, this is another problem. By tempering your thoughts of harm, in other words, don't get too, because what happens if you think, oh my God, everything's going to be bad, you won't act properly, you panic, and then that creates calamity. Panic and not being at ease, rushing, things like this are going to ultimately lead to even worse outcomes for you. So temper your thoughts of harm. So he has this one. The first is the tempering thoughts of harm. A tempering thought first, tempering thoughts of gain, which will help you accomplish. Tempering thoughts of harm will extricate himself from calamity, so avoid calamity, right? To get him out of calamity. He reduces the feudal lord to submission by causing them harm. In other words, your feudal lords and all the lords who are under this, that you need to basically, you do what? You put them into submission to you and what you want by causing them harm. He wears them down by keeping them constantly occupied. So they're keeping them occupied. They have to do. They can't think of. They can't read. In other words, they can't act. Remember what he's saying is you should always make sure that your opponent, is reacting to you. Is doing what you want him to do or her to, whatever. I'm going to use the him here, but the opponent is you're getting them to do what you want you to do. In other words, they're acting to your decisions, your acts. Um, he precipitates them he precipitates them. In other words, that means to get them to act and get them to move with thoughts of gain. In other words, he put these gains in front of them, his enemies. In other words, again, you cost them into what? Causing them harm. You reduce them to submission by constant causing them harm. You wear them down by keeping them occupied, and you get them to act the way you want them by offering thoughts of gain, some profit that you can get some benefit from this. And once knowing their minds and knowing what will profit them, and you offer that, these are the traps that you can set for them to motivate them to do what you want them to do. The skillful warrior does not rely on the enemy not coming, but his own preparedness. In other words, the skillful warrior doesn't rely on the enemy, does not rely on the enemies not coming, but is on his own preparedness. Means what? This means that you're prepared. If the enemy comes, you'll be able to respond to him. It's not that by him not coming, oh yeah, you're okay. Because if he came now, you'd be in trouble. No, preparedness. You need to be prepared. He does not rely on the enemies not attacking for his own impregnability. And it means is in other words, he's not okay. Impregnability here means that being able to get the enemy is able to get inside your area to get hold. And the image of to be the impregnate something is literally the sperm goes in the yeah, impregnate, you're in there and it's there. Well, that's the same way of an attack. You get into the area territory of your enemy and get a foothold and you're in, and then you're able to attack and move around in there. You get inside and then you do what? You expand and you take over. Okay, well, the skillful warrior does not rely on the enemy not coming, that he could, the attacker would be able to get into your territory and get a firm hose. So therefore, he sets up. This is an interesting thing. We had. Let's go look for a second. We had the first case of the five, then the second five, and then we have the positive and negative general, the warrior and the art, right? um, what the general must do, then the ignorant general, the warrior ignorant the art, right, and then the wise leader. And then you have the two tempering thoughts, and then the instruction about reducing the feudal lords, how he wears them down, he perpetuates he things thing, and then so therefore you have this. So you have the wise leader does these two things. He reduces that and perpetuates them. Now, that's the leader. That's the leader aspect, right? Leader, wise consideration. He tampers the thought of gain. He tampers that. He reduces the lords. He wears them down. He perpetuates them with gain. Now, the skillful warrior, he does not. The warrior does not rely on the enemy not coming to be prepared. He's not relying on the enemy's attacking for being his impregnability. So those are the two things: the wise leader and the skillful warrior. Now we have the five pitfalls, and I think this is interesting because this is where it kind of has an interesting breakdown. Um, the five pitfalls. Now for general, there are five pitfalls for a general. Okay, these are five pitfalls for a general. These are the generals, the leaders. The five mistakes, and this is where again the text splits off. It goes recklessness leading to destruction. Okay? Recklessness. So cowardice leading to capture. Hot temper prone to provocation. Delicacy to honor tending to shame. Concern with his men leading to trouble. Now notice it. He's saying these are the five pitfalls of leadership: recklessness, cowardness, hot temper, um, a delicacy of honor, and a concern for his men. And I would even say over concern for them. He does not mean to have no concern. He means that you care too much for your men. Um, and everything here is then cause and why it's a problem, right? The five pitfalls are recklessness, cowardice, hot temper, delicacy of honor, and care for his men, concern for his men. Why? Because he says the first, well, it leads to destruction. Second, recklessness leads to destruction. Cowardice leads to capture. Hot temper leads to being able to provoke provocation. A delicacy of honor means you're too concerned with honor, or you're a little bit touchy about your honor, and therefore it's easy to shame you, and that's easy to provoke you in a way. And then, in other words, this hot temper. See, this is the other side of hot. These are two things. The hot temper is that you're over anxious, and your honor is like this. And then the concern for the men leading to trouble. Now, what does he mean by this? Trouble in the sense of what you won't risk your men's life. You won't use them. I'm like thinking of in ways, the American Civil War, the story of McClellan, who constantly kind of didn't like wanting to send his soldiers to die versus someone like Grant, who would gladly have his soldiers go and get a grind mill. McClellan wanted to hold off until he had a perfect situation. He's more traditional. Well, Grant is simply just using the meat grinder of attack and attack and attack and attack. The Grant strategy is, which is the better strategy in that sense? This is that's always the question. This is the meat grind. We can say the same thing with Russians. The Russians are kind of grants. They believe in the slaughter approach, the terrible calculus of war, right? The side who has more. If I have a large army and I have a lot of soldiers, I can just send soldiers to die and die and die, and as long as I outnumber the enemy, we will win, right? This is why now this is the way the Russians used to think for centuries, and the Chinese think this way too. Um, there's a problem with this, and that is when what happens when your demographics change to some certain degree. Russia of today is not the Russia of 60 years ago, or even Second World War. Russia doesn't even have real control over its eastern lands as much, and that even though they have populations, those populations have really little loyalty or understanding of Russia per se, and often have more loyalty to their ethnicity than to the larger Russian the Western Russian, Caucasian Russian elite. And you see this a little bit in the rebellions and troops who are coming in from the eastern areas to the fight in Ukraine. Um, and the unwillingness of the Russian elite to draft within the elite city urban areas of Moscow and the big cities to send troops in. So therefore, there's a aspect of this that there's a problem. But he's saying that these are the five things you have to learn out. In other words, concern for your own man. You're too concerned for it's trouble. Now, he says, these five excesses in a general are the bane of war. He calls these five excesses, in other words, recklessness, cowardness, hot tempered, delicacy, honor, over concern for his men. These are the bane of war. Now, and then, this is actually interesting in the sense. These five exercises in general are the bane of war. Excesses are the bane of war. These five excesses are, in a general, are the bane of war. If an army is defeated and its general slain, it will surely because of these five perils. They demand most careful consideration. Okay, but this is something interesting. Let's stop for a second. The chapter was called the Nine Changes, right? Well, what are the nine changes? We have a chapter of nine, but there is no nine here. Nothing nine. So what are the nine? Let's look at maybe structurally. The first is the first five. There is the general thing in war, right? The first five, the second five, right? And then the next three, the thing that, that. Then the wise leader. So let's do this. So the wise leader, right? And then, which has, yeah, the wise leader has one, two, three, four, five, six, you know, stanzas in that sense. Six, you know. Sorry, we had a computer freeze. Ooh, sorry about that. Um, then the skillful warriors. Then the five pitfalls, and then which he calls the banes of these pitfalls are the bane of war, and then his discussion of things. So let's do the math here, right? So in general introduction, the first five. So general introduction, the first five, the second five, the the general, the warrior, the wise leader. Okay, that's four. No, 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 no. The general, and the warrior, right? Um, that's that would be thing, and then the wise leader, then the skillful warrior. Again, there's no nine here. I don't see a nine here at all. So therefore, this the nine that's absent. This is its nine is conspicuous by its absence. So this is a very odd chapter in that sense. We have a nine who's waiting, but we don't get it, and it's very interesting. He says that, but again, the nine changes. He doesn't say the nine changes are. He speaks the general who knows the nine changes. So, what are the nine changes? Now, is it to know the territory? It's know the territory. So that's one. That's five. But then the next five is 10. So wait a minute. So really there's that's the question. There's no nine here. No, there's no clear nine. So what is the nine in that sense? This is one of those odd things for a second. You get the pen, you see the. I did. I'm sorry. I stopped for a second to verify something, and that was um, I was wanting to make sure I was right, and I think it's true. Nowhere in this section does he talk about a nine, and that this is somewhat common on. Some suggest that it's a referring. The reason why he doesn't is kind of a hint that he said, well, there's maybe five factors. Remember those back in chapter five? Those he talks about different things and how these things have innumerable. That you can't. There's no way to calculate that. But then some suggest that there is that his talk in chapter that we understand what he's saying here. You have to pay attention later in chapter 11, where he will talk about the nine situations. So that there's something missing here, and that therefore it's very interesting. There's no clear case of five and five. So I'm sorry I had to take a little break there, and that's why you had to jump with my pen in my mouth. I didn't think about this. I think this is where we should end. If you liked what I've done here, you can like and say, "Oh." Of course, you can put comments and questions, or maybe even some criticisms. Um, put them in the comment section below. If you like it, like it. If you don't dislike it, you can dislike it. I'll be honest. Even though I think they disbarred, they don't count the dislikes anymore, or whatever. Who knows? Hundreds of dislikes, I don't know. But um, um, I think it would be useful, people. We will continue the next thing. Again, if you like it now. If you like, share it with somebody. If you want to see more, subscribe, please. You always need more subscriptions. So tell a friend about this. If you see this, and then last but not least, um, uh, uh, follow me on social media below. Okay. Have a good day. Bye bye.